So, even before we start the lecture, what I would really request you all is to please pay attention, because we're going to something which is related to each one of us, because it involves the self. So it involves yourself, and as you go through the process of this lecture, you must appreciate how this lecture embodies within you. What is the essence of this lecture as far as each one of us is concerned? Therefore, please kindly pay attention to yourself as much as you pay attention to the lecture. And that is also the essence of yoga, I think. So it is a union of oneself with the practice, right? So if you pay close attention to this picture, my name is Bharat Gupta, and internationally accredited practitioner is something which I really did not want to write there, but this is a mischief by Sanjay, right? So you can for the time being ignore that. And if you take your attention to the picture only and not to the written matter, then what do you say? आप क्या देख पाते हैं? That is important. Why I am focusing on this is because this has got to do very closely to your own self and to somatics. So, जो मुझे दिखता है, I can see earth, I can see a tree, and I see a mix of colors in sky. So I see earth, tree, sky, and I see light, mix of colors of the sun. So it's more likely, it's like a setting sun situation. Now these are different elements. Earth, biology, which is the tree. It is a living thing, the tree, and the sky and light. But you see these different elements as separate. But if you see the whole picture as a single piece, what do you see? You see the whole, right? In the same way, when you identified yourself with a body and a mind as separate, then you need a union of these two. But when you see your body and mind together as one, then there is no need for a union because you are a complete whole. And that is the essence of this lecture. That how do you appreciate the whole of you as one embodied living being, which means body, mind, and the soul as one whole, right? And that is what the lecture is all about. And I believe that originally Patanjali proposed yoga or founded yoga with that in mind. That is my personal opinion, and I would clarify that you can have different perception, and that is okay, right? So we go on to the next slide. So a little bit of introduction of somatics. Somatics was a brainchild of Thomas Hanna, who lived between 1928 to 1990, and he died in a car crash at the age of 62 when he was at the peak of his work, unfortunately. But he had the first batch of students when he started the training program. Before that, he had 20 years of healing to his credit. But when he instituted the program, the very first year of his training, it was a 3-year program. He died in a car crash, which was very unfortunate, but his wife, he carried on the work, and his students, about 60% of his students, they carried on the work, and almost now we are 34 years from there. I belong to the fourth generation of teachers, right? So I have learned from the third generation, and the third generation, my teachers have learned from the second generation, and the first generation, obviously, the person is no more. Now, Hannah started the work in a more clinical way. So he instituted a clinical somatic education. Here the word education is very important. So why I'm stressing on education is that it is not a healing protocol, but हमारा ये मानना है as clinical somatic educators that healing is a process of education. That it is not that there is a practitioner and there is a person to be healed, but the healing is a process of the self which can only take place if the self is educated about itself, right? And Hannah stressed very much on that. And the protocol is that it focuses on movement awareness and self-regulation. So as an educator, I can teach you very much like a teacher in class 2 or even in nursery or class 10 passes on learning to a student, but that learning remains good with the student for the rest of his life. So education has that impact that it stays with you for the rest of your life, and you don't need a healer once you have the education. So once you have the education about your own self, then you don't need anything further, that you can do the self-exploration and continue on the work. And I feel yoga is very much like that. And of course, the byproduct of self-education is that it eliminates chronic pains and it improves physical function. I'll come to this later on. So Thomas Alva was a visionary. He was a PhD in philosophy and from University of Chicago, and he became chairman of Florida University Philosophical Society. Later on, he coined the word somatics in 1976, and there are many different somatic protocols since then. But he was the original. He was the person who coined that word, somatics. And then he went on to develop clinical somatic education, or Hannah somatic education. So his contributions were, apart from the PhD that he did in philosophy and divinity, he studied neurology, blending philosophy and neurosciences. He was inspired by another genius in movement practice called Moshe Feldenkrais, who was at that same time developing a functional integration protocol. And he was from Israel. And Thomas Hannah collaborated with Moshe Feldenkrais to develop his own work in a parallel way. So they were friends actually. And he authored a book in the 1969, besides many other books, but the very first book was Bodies in Report. He defined Soma as me, the bodily being. So Soma is not this body, but Soma is my whole self, including my mind and my soul. So it is not just a union of body, mind, and soul, but it is to see the body, mind, and soul as one whole thing and not separate. Then he went on to identify sensory motor amnesia and introduced a term called sensory motor awareness or remembrance. And then he went on to, he founded his own institute in 1975, but unfortunately, he could only maintain his work till 1990, and he died in a car crash. So this was about a little bit about a brief history. But let's come back to the what is somatic education. So here, these are very simple things to understand. So in somatics, what we see, function maintains structure. For us, structure is not the primary thing. So अगर आप बोलें कि मेरे skeleton में, मेरे shoulders में pain है, so we don't see the shoulder as a problem. We see the function of the shoulder as a problem. And we go to the root cause of the function. What is the function which is lacking and how to revive the function? Once the function is revived, pain goes away. And that has been seen in thousands and thousands of life cases. So the problems are often functional and not structural. And sensory motor amnesia is reversible through relearning processes. And this practice focuses on voluntary, slow, easy, gentle movements. So the word is slow, easy, gentle movements. Even somebody who's bedridden and can move can do somatics. Because somebody who cannot move can imagine. And that itself creates movement bodily within. Movements must be done with interest and curiosity. This is important because any kind of a learning cannot be done unless there is interest and curiosity. You give a child a maths problem and the child is not interested in maths, the child will never learn, right? So for any learning to take place, any resolution of any problem is rooted in interest and curiosity. So अगर आप बच्चे को खिलौना दे देंगे, उसको वो it'll take it apart because it is curious and that is how it learns. But we stop the child from doing that and we're actually stopping the child from learning. So curiosity is very important. And finally, the most important thing is attention, which is also required in yoga. Attention is essential for learning, which cannot be attained if the movements are fast, difficult, painful, abrupt, and involve repetitions without interest and curiosity. This is a very important, this last para. Normally, हम बोलते हैं कि try again. Yeah? But in trying again and again, without any interest, we end up hurting and harming ourselves. It has been seen, right? It will, if it does not affect us bodily, it will affect us psychologically. So whatever you do, the basic principles of somatics is that less is more, and doing everything with ease is the crux of not getting into problems. So whatever you do, you should do it with a sense of ease and not effort. So reducing effort is the core to somatic practice. How do, if I want to lift a weight, how do I lift a weight with least effort? Is the core of somatic process. Because if you make effort, something will habituate to lift the weight through an effort, and therefore something will go bad with your body, and then you will end up going to a doctor. So you have to be very, very aware of how to use yourself functionally, and that is also part of somatic education. So, आप देख सकते हैं इस पिक्चर से कि what it signifies. It signifies a process which is called pandiculation. In simple terms, it's called yawning. I'm quite sure कि yawning के बारे में तो सब जानते ही हैं, हम सब yawn करते हैं, पर आप notice करेंगे कि as adults we yawn less, children yawn more, and animals are always yawning, right? अगर आपके घर में dog या cat है, तो आप देखेंगे कि they are always yawning. Functionally, what a yawn does is it releases tension in the body. That is functionally what a yawn does. It enables a deep inhalation and then it releases the tension in the body through the process of the yawn. So there is a process of contraction in the body, and then there is a slow release of that contraction. That is why you take a lot of time to release out of a yawn. So what you can see is a natural involuntary paniculation. This is what yawning is. You can see this man here, he's not stretching, but yawning is something like stretching in a very different way. So normally when we do an exercise, we stretch ourselves, but that stretching is different from the stretching of a yawn. Because after a yawn, you feel more enabled and you become chust ho jate hain. You become very active. And all animals, all birds, all reptiles, they yawn. This has been seen in nature. And somatics is all about, the kind of somatics that I teach is all about voluntary paniculation. So what you just saw in the previous picture is involuntary. It's a natural paniculation, natural yawn. And somatics or Hana somatics is a voluntary yawning, which means you go into a practice and make that practice into the similar way of yawning. अभी जैसे माता जी कर रही हैं, अभी इन्होंने बहुत deep yawning किया है, और इसके बाद इनका attention span बढ़ जाएगा, which is very good. So normally socially अगर आप public में yawn करते हैं, तो उसको impolite माना जाता है, especially in the Western culture, which you should not discourage. So yawning is a good thing in my respect, and we should culturally include that in our culture. It is something which is naturally very good. But it's a practice now. We're coming back to the practice of somatics. So what paniculation does is it resets the resting length of a part. So for example, if I contract my front body, I contract my abdomen, and then slowly release out of it. So what am I doing in my front body is that I am engaging my front body to expand and release. So I go into a pattern of contraction, then I release out of this contraction. Right? This is like a yawn. And that is what it does is it resets the resting length of the muscles in my front body, in my abdomen, in my chest, in my shoulders, in my neck. So जितने muscles जो contracted होते हैं, they get reset in the brain. And this merging of the body and the brain through the nervous system is what somatics is all about. And the learned movements involved, the very first thing is sensation. अगर आप कुछ भी sense नहीं कर सकते, तो आप उसके बारे में कुछ नहीं कर सकते. If I'm standing here, I'm sensing the ground. If I can't sense the ground, I can't stand. Because my neurological my muscles which are enabling me to stand and support myself will become ineffective. So sensation is the primary thing in any movement. And the second is voluntary contraction. So if I have to walk, what is the action of walk? I have to lift my leg up. When I lift the leg up, there are some muscles which are contracting, and these muscles involuntarily contract because I sense the ground. The sensation goes through my head. There is a motor action. There is a signal which goes back to my leg to work. I lift the leg, the muscles work, and I walk forward. And then my spine is supporting me also. And in the practice of somatics, what we do is we do simple, gentle movements, which is voluntary contraction, and with controlled slow release, so that the resting length of the released muscle is increased. So when a muscle's resting length is increased, what happens? You get more capacity to do work, which means it will make the work easier to do. Right? जब आपके muscles जब relax हो जाएंगे और लंबे हो जाएंगे, so you will feel more enabled to do anything. So it enhances voluntary neuromuscular control. And this practice can be done by the self, or it can be instructor-led to release chronic muscle tension. So the key concepts here are the living body experienced from within. So Soma is the living body experienced from within. And then the most important part is the proprioception. It is the first person awareness of bodily posture and movement. So if I do not know where my head is and where my foot is, where my shoulders are, I cannot balance myself. So this aspect of where I am in space and where I am in respect to the environment is called proprioception. Most of the problems in our lives, they come about, especially neuromuscular or skeletal. They come about because we lose proprioception. आपने सोशल मीडिया में एक बड़ी पॉपुलर सी बात देखी होगी कि वो बोलते हैं कि आप एक टांग उठा के आंख बंद करके खड़े हो जाइए, कितनी देर आप बैलेंस कर सकते हैं. इट सिग्निफाइज एज. अगर आप 30 सेकंड के लिए बैलेंस कर सकते हैं, देन you are in this age category. अगर आप 20 seconds के लिए balance कर सकते हैं तो इस age category. Exactly what is happening here is that your proprioception reduces with age, and you can reverse that, which means अगर आप अपनी proprioception को enhance करेंगे, then aging is only a myth. It is not a fact. Which means you can be 85 and still you can stand with your eyes closed on one foot for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, right? So this becomes very relevant to the practice of yoga, because most of us, हम लोग योगा से कतराते क्यों? Because we are not free and flexible in our bodies. And how do you bring about freedom and flexibility in your body? One way is you force yourself, right? But there are not many people who want to force yourself, especially after an age of 50 or 60. तो कई लोग योगा practice start ही नहीं कर पाते because they are not free in their body. So what is a mechanism of freeing the body and the mind? Somatics is one way of doing that. I teach a lot of people who are yogis, who have chronic problems, and they are expert yogis and they can do everything, all kinds of asanas, but they have big problems in their body because they have not learned to release their body. They can contract, they can mold, they can fold, but then they do not know how to release it. Releasing is all about, so आपको neutral length में, जब आप एक posture में जाते हैं, तो वापस आप neutral length में कैसे आएंगे? आपने बच्चों को देखा होगा, 1.5 साल, 2 साल, 3 साल का बच्चा, right? Never needs exercise. They don't need exercise. They will sleep, they'll wake up and they'll start running around. They don't need exercise, they don't need yoga. As adults we need yoga, we need exercise. But children don't, because children, they immediately return back to their resting life. So एक बच्चा बहुत भाग दौड़ करेगा और हर किस्म की एक्टिविटी करेगा, फोल्ड भी हो जाएगा, आप बच्चे को फोल्ड भी कर देंगे और वो टोटली रिलीज हो जाता है, बिकॉज the child's soma has a natural capacity to return back to the resting life. लेकिन हम लोग adults हैं, we are habituated. So मोबाइल फोन है तो आप मोबाइल फोन पे देखेंगे, this is what will happen slowly. Your back will go back, your tummy will go in, your shoulder will go forward, your head will go forward. Your brain says, 1 घंटे से इसी पोस्चर पे है तो ये natural है. It is very easy to fool the mind, but it is very difficult to fool the body. The mind, when the mind overrides the body, is when all the problems begin to come into you. So it is very important to release the mind. किसी सज्जन सुबह के जो opening ceremony थी, उसमें one of the speakers was talking about, I think जोचित कैसे वो ही बात कर रहे थे, why it is so important to have a very strong mind, right? So if you don't have the mind which is willing to release the body, you cannot solve your problems. Then you will end up in hospitals, you will end up with doctors, and you will end up taking all the medicines. And I've seen a lot of yogis, I'm sorry to say this, but they practice all their lives and they end up in a lot of mess later on in their life because they are forcing their bodies all the time. Forcing is no solution to health. In fact, you should learn how not to focus and to be able to go down completely. जब आप उठते हैं और आप ग्राउंड को टच नहीं कर सकते, understand you have a problem. And you must learn how to release that. And it is very easy. जब एक बच्चा होता है, it can go down and do everything. आप बच्चे को hold कर दीजिए, बच्चा says nothing, but बच्चा will revolt if it doesn't want this to be done, right? If the child understands that मुझे forceful, you cannot bend me forcefully. It is only adults we do things forcefully, and that creates a lot of problems. So that is essentially motor amnesia. What does amnesia mean? Amnesia means forgetfulness. So when there is a forgetfulness in the body in respect to the brain, in respect to the motor cortex in the brain, then motor action cannot take place and therefore the body will remain in a habitual posture. तो जब आप बैठते हैं चेयर पे और आप चेयर पे बैठते हैं और आप अपने ऑफिस में बैठे हैं और आप 3 घंटे बैठे हैं अपना काम कर रहे हैं लैपटॉप पे, your body will go into this posture and now the brain says this is natural, this is neutral for the body because that is how the brain reads it. And brain also reads it as anxiety. So आप देखेंगे कि those who stay on the mobile phone और आजकल IT sector में आप mostly लोगों को देखेंगे they are full of anxiety. That is because this is also anxiety pattern. This is a pattern of sitting and this is also the anxiety pattern. And the brain says, okay, I'm happy with anxiety, but you're not happy with anxiety. Yeah, your body is not happy with anxiety and then it becomes very difficult to open up. And then you say, very low back problem only. That is because you have habituated yourself to a pattern. Your brain and body should be in sync so that I can sit for 5 hours, get up and still be straight, right? This is important and this is what somatic yoga or somatic practice is all about. So there is sensory motor amnesia, and then we convert through the somatic practices sensory motor amnesia into sensory motor awareness or remembrance. So जो भूल गया है उसको वापस retrain करना है और वापस ले आना है. Through this mechanism, you can resolve all body problems, especially chronic pains. So what is pain? Pain is a reflex that stays in you even when there is no problem. आप देखेंगे, आप डॉक्टर के पास एक्सरे लेके जाएंगे, डॉक्टर बोलेगा आपका एक्सरे तो ठीक है, लेकिन आप बोलेंगे डॉक्टर लेकिन मेरे को तो नेक में पेन होती है. Sometimes there is no physical deformity, but it stays in the head as pain, and it carries on even when there is no physical problem. And then I will skip these 3 parts: green light reflex, red light reflex, trauma reflex. But I will simply say that the green light is our back body, which is when we are joyous, we are like this, right? This is green light, a joyful person. But it can also create low body, low back, and the back problems. And most of the sports people have a lot of back problem. That is because they're habitually contracted in the back body. Red light reflex is when you're contracted in the front body. It is like green light to signal ki light hoti hai. Green light means go. So somebody who's on the go always has a lot of back problems. Somebody who's like startle or withdrawal or always sitting has the red light problem. So you have the back light problems, the green light problems, which is the back, red light problem, which is the front, and the trauma reflex is when there is trauma in the body. I'm not talking about mental trauma, I'm talking about physical trauma. So when you have an accident, one of the side of your body wants to protect. So अगर आपको टांग में इंजरी है, so ये साइड अपने आप को प्रोटेक्ट करेगी, बॉडी को ये contraction में चले जाएगी. And this contraction becomes habitual. When it becomes habitual, then there is chronic problems that appear. So you have to learn. So original reflex is safeguarding. When the body is injured, it safeguards. But then after some time it heals. And you have to come out of it. So you have to relearn how to come back to the original resting then. Right? So that is the trauma reflex. So aging is a myth. This is what we believe as somatic practitioners. मेरी दाढ़ी से मत जाइएगा, but I am more enabled than when I was 25 years old. I can run a marathon. You can wake me up at 3 o'clock and I run a marathon. You can wake me up at 3 o'clock in the night and I run a marathon. Khali stomach. I can stay without food for 5 days. I can stay without water for 3 days. So I was not like this. I was not so enabled when I was 25 years old. But it is only through practice and self-learning, learning about oneself, then that one can actually. So there is no such thing as aging. तो आप अपने आप को ये कहना बंद कर दें कि आप you're growing old. That is the worst thing that you can do to yourself. The very first thing to heal is to first say, I am not getting old, but I am getting wiser. Right? So that use that wisdom in your favor instead of your sense that you are, and you can do anything and everything in life as long as you learn how to remain functional. Function is most important. So aging is a myth which arises from caging the human soma into habituation. So never fall into habits. When you fall into habits, recognize that you're falling into habits and you release out of habits. So when you not habituated to anything in your life, and this is one of the principles of yoga. Ultimately, आप मोक्ष क्यों चाहते हैं? किस चीज से आप मोक्ष चाहते हैं? Habits से. अब वो सब जो आपने acquire कर लिया और you are habituated in you, चाहे वो आपका धन है, चाहे वो आपका परिवार है, चाहे वो आपके लालच है, किसी भी तरीके का. So philosophically it is like that. In the body also it is like that. So you can remain young if you don't habituate yourself in any way. जैसे एक बच्चा न्यूट्रल रहता है, न्यूट्रल रहिए, क्यूरियस रहिए, इंटरेस्ट रखिए लाइफ में, and life will take you forward. And the last thing, am I running out of time? What's the time? Can somebody tell me what is the time? 3:31. Okay, I'll take 10 minutes. So, the proprioceptive training I already talked about. So, proprioception is to know where are you in space so that you can keep your balance and your muscles can remain free and easy and relaxed. Improves movement possibilities and quality of life, promotes vitality, cognitive clarity throughout life. Enhanced somatic practice empowers individuals for their own well-being, holistic approach to pain relief, physical and psychological freedom, integrates philosophy, neuroscience, and movement education. So, here is something I want to show you, and this is about you. This is not about a class of biology. ये आप हैं. तो अगर आप इस पिक्चर में देखेंगे, इस पिक्चर में देखेंगे, this is your sensory. The blue and the brown part is your sensory motor cortex. This is where all your body is mapped. So आपका resting length एक muscle की, for example bicep है. Bicep is this muscle, right? इसकी रेस्टिंग लेंथ, अगर ये बाइसेप बहुत टाइट रहेगा तो आपका आर्म खुलेगा नहीं, ऐसा रहेगा। आपने देखा है बॉडी बिल्डर्स का आर्म हमेशा ऐसा रहता है, बिकॉज दे आर ऑलवेज कॉन्ट्रैक्टेड, बट एक बच्चे का आर्म एकदम ऐसा होता है, राइट? लेडीज का आर्म देखेंगे कि वो हमेशा ऐसा रहता है, because they are always contracted in their front body. Reason? Our society and our culture. Because ladies are always like suppressed backwards. So they are always, right from the birth, they get habituated into a certain pattern of living. That is why they cannot free their arm. Aadmiyon ka arm will always be like this. The ladies' arm is always like this. This is one of the social problems. So our body is completely mapped. It's called homunculus, and every part of the brain here. You see this? It maps our body. This is the homunculus in the brain. You can see this is the face. This part represents the face. This part represents the hand, the leg, and many other parts. But most of the things that the brain, the bigger part of homunculus is the hands and the face. And that is why we are so expressive with our hands and fingers, and we are expressive with our face. Because most of the area of the homunculus or the motor cortex is taken up by these parts. That is why, the writing skill, artistry, and all that comes from there. And this is a general representation of a human being in the brain. So your brain reads you like this. This is how your brain reads you. A big head, big hands, and the rest of the body is small. So your hands and your head are very big in the brain. That is how also you perceive yourself. If you pay close attention to yourself, you will see this is how you perceive yourself. So I'm just trying to say that the body-mind connection is very large, and this is not a union of body and mind. Look at it as a whole one, right? We can go into the soul or the spirit part some other time. So here you can see, what you see on the left side is the red light reflex. This front area, whatever is in the red or brown is the red light areas which fold up the body. They are like flexors of the body, flexing muscles of the body. And whatever you can see in yellow or green are the extensors of the body. They open up your body. Now the neutral is when the flexors and the extensors, the flexors in the front, extensors in the back, when they're equal, then the body, you will feel taller, you will feel wider, you will feel stronger. Just by equalization of the front and the back body. And this is part of what I teach. And this is a typical movement practice. I will be doing the class tomorrow. I might not do the same class, but this is a very typical problem. You lie down on the back, the very first picture, you lie down on the back, and you do a little arch and flattening of the lower back to release it. Then you can do the curling, then slowly release. When you slowly release, you see the length appearing in your body. That is how your brain is reading it, and it releases. So this second exercise improves your chakras. So I'm just trying to show you how simple somatic practice will improve your yoga practice. This second part improves release of the front body, and therefore chakrasana you need a longer front body, right? Because you're going to back bend. This is lying on the front. The picture is not very clear. This is lying on your belly, and this is something like cobra pose, but it is not a cobra pose. It's movement, right? So you lift up your head, you lift up, lying on the belly, you lift up your head, lift up your opposite leg, you slowly release, so that the diagonal length in the body that appears to become bigger, and that what you're doing is you're resetting your motor cortex. It's very easy to reset. 2, 3, maximum 5 movements, your motor cortex will be released. And if anybody is interested, can join the morning class and find out for yourself. And that is a diagonal front body movement. So I'm just giving you an example of what I teach. Is just only a very small part of it. Then that is the trauma release. These are all trauma releases, side body release. So you would have seen that there are people who cannot walk. Their body is like this and they are walking like this, right? There are a lot of people who, and even most of us, I'm exaggerating this, most of us feel this kind of a problem sometime or another. बहुत tight है, ठीक से walk नहीं हो रही है, can't walk freely, can't run at all. This is because of the trauma part. These are all trauma releases.
You have, excuse me.
I'm finishing.
Okay.
So in conclusion, I will just read out. Somatics transforms the body, mind, spirit as a whole, offers learning tools for lifelong self-awareness and wellness. The field of somatics enables somatic literacy and empowers the soma with freedom. What is freedom? Freedom is being free to be yourself, not how the other is. It is freedom within. To be free to be yourself, which means you have to first understand what yourself is, right? And somatic yoga is a novel way of discovering that the living soma is the oneness of body and mind, and there is no such thing as body independent of mind or vice versa. There is no body without the mind, there is no mind without the body, right? The speaker sincerely believes that the great sage Patanjali coined yoga as a process to discover and attain salvation, that is freedom of human soma, by understanding the self through 8 limbs of Yoga Sutras. Samadhi or moksha, the ultimate attainment of human understanding of the self. Self-healing is holistic and cannot be attained completely without self-understanding. So without self-understanding, there is nothing. So you are your own healer. What I teach is to help you to become your own healer. Thank you. So I will, is there a question answer session or we can do that later on? कोई कुछ पूछना चाहे तो I'll be happy to. I have only 2-3 minutes.
तो ये जो पतंजलि को आप कह रहे हैं, तो पतंजलि में तो ये जो आप बता रहे हैं कि तीनों एक ही है।
हाँ जी।
आप पतंजलि में कहाँ से पढ़ते हैं, कैसे पढ़ते हैं कि तीनों आपको एक ही दिखाई देते हैं?
नहीं, मैं पतंजलि में नहीं पढ़ रहा हूँ, लेकिन ये मेरा इंटरप्रिटेशन है।
ये तो अच्छा है।
ये मेरा इंटरप्रिटेशन है। तो मैं ये नहीं कह रहा हूँ कि मैं एक योगी हूँ। मैं ये कह रहा हूँ कि जो मैं जितना भी योगी हूँ, जितना भी मैंने अपने आप को समझा है और जितना भी मैंने योगा को समझा है, मेरे हिसाब से, बिकॉज मैं एक योगा प्रैक्टिशनर भी हूँ और मैं एक सोमैटिक प्रैक्टिशनर भी हूँ, सो मैं उसको कोरिलेट कर पाता हूँ। आप इनको देंगे?
We have not to divide
Yes.
mind and body.
Yes. Yes.
We have to unite them.
Yes.
Rather, we should create them one. Then we have to go understand the causes and more gently and more.
Exactly.
That is the truth. In the yoga, we have to, in the Buddhist yoga, more and more we have to be conscious. And the slow process, so that is the common point. But there are many theories which will be against it.
Yes, there are a lot of contradictions in yoga, the way it is practiced today. But मेरा ये मानना है कि पतंजलि ने जो आज की प्रैक्टिस है, पतंजलि की वो प्रैक्टिस नहीं थी, ना ही उनका इंटेंट था. This has become more modern and it is influenced by the West. ये मेरा मानना है. हमारी जो ओरिजिनल योगा की पद्धति है वो बहुत डिफरेंट है and we should rediscover it.
There are methods of yoga in India also. They accept only one. For example, you go and the body is being made. There are ways to regulate, and there is only one, not two.
Yes.
We want to be immortal. It is as is bodily being. So So there are also processes. So that is in accordance with that.
Yeah.
That
So
is very good. Very
yeah,
good.
yeah. So basically, what happens is
Man
that
who wants to gain the health, he should treat them one.
yes. So how does one get into this whole process of being one? Should we do it in a forceful manner, or should we do it kindly? I feel we should do it kindly. We have to treat ourselves kindly and not force ourselves in any manner. But many of the yoga practices that I see, that and especially Facebook, YouTube, and all, it's very, very forceful, and it is not the right kind of yoga. So yoga is not circus. People can do better yoga than yogis can. Okay, but that is not bending the body is not a yoga. Yoga is much more than just exercises. Exercise is only 2% of what yoga is.
Soul, body.
Yes. So it is this union in a different way. Union is to first separate and then to combine. But in my thinking, it is not separate. It is not different. So why should we start from that part? Why should we start from differentiating body, mind, and the soul as different to three different aspects? We should start from the oneness of being and then start from there. This is what my thinking is, and I think most of the things हमको relate कर पा रहे हैं.
There are two ways. One is called the analytic. You separate the first two things. Another is synthetic. You start with the whole.
Yes.
And go. There must be some idea.
So it is good to also understand the separate, but you have to also see how it is actually a part of the whole.
But within the one.
Yeah, it is within the one. It is part of the whole. So you always see your parts. You always see your parts as a part of the whole. Then there is no problem. Any other questions? Yeah, उनको mic दे दीजिए.
Good evening, everyone. Sir, आज हम लोगों ने बात करी मेंटल हीलिंग के बारे में, शारीरिक स्वास्थ्य के बारे में, मानसिक शांति के बारे में, स्वास्थ्य के बारे में. एक सर समस्या जो आपने कही कि मेल एंड फीमेल पोस्चर जेस्चर के बारे में जो हमने बात करी है, हैंड्स के बारे में, है ना, कि फीमेल है तो उनके हैंड्स इट्स अ सोशल प्रॉब्लम आपने बताया. तो सर ये मानसिक जो प्रताड़ना महिलाओं के प्रति है, इससे हम कैसे डील कर सकते हैं?
So it is mainly about empowerment. And so how do you empower yourself?
ये जो है ये मानसिक शांति की जहाँ तक हम बात करते हैं, भले ही हम महिलाएं कितना भी एजुकेटेड आ रहे हैं, आगे आ रहे हैं, पढ़ रहे हैं, सब सारी चीजें हैं, बट एक मानसिक शांति नहीं है और कहीं ना कहीं इससे हम सभी प्रताड़ित हैं.
So how do you get out of this habituated pattern which shows in your body, because your mind is contracted. There's a lot of contraction in the mind. There's a lot of habituated withdrawal symptom which reflects in the body. So when it reflects in the body, how do you see a problem? How do you solve any problem? When there is a clarity to the problem, then you can do something with the problem. But if you can't see the problem, you can't do anything about it, then you need the doctor, you need the healer. So you see, how does a problem stay within you? Be with the problem first, understand the problem, and then release out of the problem. You can release your mind through the body. You can release the mind through the body. You can release your anxieties and your patterns in the mind through the body. And this is a wonderful tool. Most of my students, 90% of them are ladies. And why they come to my class and relate to this practice more is because the ease of doing it, and that they find more release, because whether they are from the West or from the East, throughout the world, humans are the same. Let me tell you this. And in every culture, the woman is suppressed. In whichever way she is suppressed and have the same problems. More or less. Through the body body, you can recover back.
ओके सर।
थैंक यू वेरी मच सब लोगों को सुनने के लिए। ये मेरे मित्र भी हैं, मेरे गुरु भी हैं, क्योंकि मैं इनके स्टूडेंट हूँ 3 साल से। और मैं खुद जब फिट हो गई आईसीयू से निकल के, और आपके सामने मैं फिजिकली इतना फिट हूँ, मेंटली बहुत स्ट्रांग हो गई, तो मैं सोचती हूँ कि सब लोग हो सकते हैं। और कल ये चले जाएंगे, आफ्टरनून में इनकी फ्लाइट है, तो मैं चाहती थी कि आप लोग सब एक हैंड्स ऑन फर्स्ट 1 आवर मॉर्निंग में करें। और राजेश्वर जी के
देखते हैं परमिशन क्या मिल पाती है हमको, समय परमिट करेगा तो हम निश्चित रूप से कराने का प्रयास करें।
तो अगर आप नहीं कर पाएंगे तो हम फिजिक्स डिपार्टमेंट में करवा लेंगे।
हम अभी डिसाइड
तो ये आप डिसाइड करके,
करते हैं।
क्योंकि एक जगह होल्ड
थैंक यू सर, थैंक यू वेरी मच। योग हाँ तो ठीक है थैंक यू वेरी मच।
आप ऑर्गेनाइजिंग में हैं, आप ऑर्गेनाइज कीजिए, कहाँ कराइएगा, मैच चाहिए।
आप मंच पर एक मिनट, अरे भाई दूसरा मैडम प्लीज आप थोड़ा मैं समझता हूँ कि योग की यही खासियत भी है कि योग केवल थियरी नहीं है, थेरेपी भी है। और यही आज से नहीं, बहुत पहले से मैं कहता भी रहा हूँ, गुरुजी भी है इस बात का, हम लोग बहुत